river that separates the countries.
When we left Antigua, we knew we were headed south into El Salvador. To be honest, we were scared. But not in the way you might think. Our concerns are with the endless heat and humidity ahead of us. Unlike North America and Europe, the coastline along Central America does not cool in the winter. There are just dry seasons and wet seasons, and it's hot all the time. We have a little less than 3 weeks to make our way to Costa Rica to meet my family. There are 4 borders to cross between here and there. To make matters worse, the most challenging ones lay ahead. But fortunately so far, El Salvador was easy and quick.
Check out. Oh, when's the last time you had those? France. Maybe. Are you feeling my whipped cream or my coffee?
It actually tastes like pizza.
Yeah?
Try it, Emma.
It does.
In recent years, El Salvador has severely cracked down on organized crime and gang violence with great success, even though it did it with somewhat controversial ways. But the immediate result is that the country has transformed itself from one of the most dangerous places on earth to one of the safest in Central America. Everything you heard on the news in recent years about the dangers of visiting El Salvador is now a thing of the past, at least for now. The first spot we found was a humble surfer's hostel a short walk from the popular surf break of El Sunsal. We wasted no time getting to the beach to see what the hype is all about. The water was warm and the surf was pumping. Good waves in El Salvador are not exactly a secret these days, so the lineup was fairly crowded. But for how fun it is out there, a place like this in California would have 5 to 10 times as many people in the water. But we're happy to finally be at a beach along the Pacific coast again. Believe it or not, the last time we were on this shoreline with our van was all the way back in Sayulita, just 2 days after we ferried from Baja to mainland Mexico. These days, El Salvador has been vigorously promoting its beautiful beaches and world-class surf breaks. Even though we have limited time to get through this stretch of Central America, we decided to spend a week along the coast.
Look how you found a friend.
Eggs on top of fruit, eggs below fruit, below another fruit.
When we built this van, we decided against installing air conditioning since it was designed for North America and Europe, where the climates are less humid and cooler. Down here, we're paying the price. The best we can do in these conditions is to try to park under shade, but with little to no solar output, we will also need to plug in. Another thing we're enjoying in El Salvador is that we finally seem to have found the cheap prices in Central America. So much so, we even felt like we could actually afford to sit at a fancy waterfront restaurant bar for an afternoon treat for everyone after a day at the beach. Smoothies for the kids and ice-cold cervezas for the grown-ups. Life is pretty good here in El Salvador.
Smells nice, yeah? How does that taste?
This looks like they pulled it off a succulent hip.
All right, okay.
Just around the corner from our hostel, we also found a pupusa stand selling them for a mere 85 cents a piece. We knew this was the place to be when the owner of the hostel also showed up for dinner.
So the stuff is inside of these things.
We have no idea what the right way is to eat these, but putting the veggies in the middle and folding it up like a taco sounds good to me. As much as we're getting comfortable here at the Surfers Hostel, we felt like we could do better. If we're going to hang out here for a while, we wanted to get better access to the beach. So we found a restaurant hotel that allows campers to park overnight. There's food, drinks, a small swimming pool, electricity to run our fans, and right on the beach. People come here during the day to eat, drink, and frolic in the water. But at night, this place is very tranquil and quiet. We basically have the place to ourselves. Even though we're closer to the water, the surf isn't as good as the last place. But since it is a long stretch of shallow beach, kids can safely swim and play in the water while we watch them from ashore. We really enjoy our time here in El Salvador. Even with the daytime temps consistently in the 90s, it cools down enough at night to be tolerable. But after a week, we needed to continue south. Making our way down to the border of Honduras, we opted to stay a couple of miles short of the border crossing. This gives us the option to enter Honduras in the early morning, to drive across the short stretch of its Pacific coast and attempt a second crossing into Nicaragua in that same day. This would prove to be a challenge. Border crossings are essentially camera-free zones, so we usually have no footage from them. But long story short, the crossing into Honduras took nearly 6 hours. Not because the crossing was difficult, but because when we arrived in the morning, there just happens to be a huge line wrapping all the way around the building. We'll get into a lot more details of how these border crossings went in our freely roaming video. Check the link in the description if you're interested in watching. Having spent so much longer than we anticipated at the Honduras border, we arrived later that day at the Nicaragua border, far later than we hoped. And this is the one border we have been dreading. Nicaragua is notoriously difficult to enter and exit. Again, we were not allowed to film during the border crossing, but here, once again, we were stuck for another 6 hours trying to get through. When we finally did, it was dark. Fortunately, we were able to find another truck stop just a couple miles past the border, and we settled in for the night. Between our week spent in El Salvador and multiple days driving and border crossings, we now only have a week left before we have to be in Costa Rica. That leaves us about a week here in Nicaragua. It's already hot.
Do you want a new t-shirt or are you just gonna sweat the next one?
See how it is in the car.
Okay.
One of the places we knew we wanted to visit is known as the youngest volcano in Central America, Cerro Negro. First appeared on the volcano scene in 1850, it is an active basalt cinder cone volcano. A popular activity to do here is called volcano boarding. You can rent boards made of planks of wood, jumpsuits, and other protective gear at the visitor center. The 30 to 60 minute hike will take you up the backside of the volcano to slide down the front steep hill. We saw several tourists climb up and slide down as we watched from below. We chose to not partake in the shenanigans after long hot days of getting here.
I don't know.
Camping here at the foot of Cerro Negro in Nicaragua, we can finally see the light on the other side. When we left Mexico, we had nearly all of Central America and its borders ahead of us. 3 weeks later, we're only one border crossing away from Costa Rica, where we'll be spending Christmas and New Year's with my family.
How's that stick not breaking? You running away?
That there behind me is the famous volcano in Nicaragua called Cerro Negro. And it last erupted in the 90s. I believe 1997, but I'll have to look that up to confirm, so don't quote me on it. But yeah, we're in Nicaragua now. We did a harrowing driving day yesterday. Didn't necessarily cover a lot of distance, but we drove from the edge of El Salvador on the El Salvador side of the El Salvador-Honduras border. And then we drove across the small part of Honduras's Pacific coast. We drove all the way across that, which isn't very far, maybe 100 miles. And we got to the Honduras-Nicaragua side of the border, and we crossed two borders. The Honduras border was supposed to be really easy. It was actually so crowded. There was a line going out the door, like wrapping almost all the way around the whole front part of the building. And not knowing ways to get in, I mean, there's a few different ways to get in quicker, aka cut in line. And we didn't really want to do that because we saw all these other people that have to wait. We don't want to make them feel like we're privileged by some way. So we waited, but turns out, like, if you have, there were actually two lines we didn't know about. One line was to go check into Honduras, one was to check out of Honduras. So first we left the El Salvador side, check out, return our temporary import permit, and that was easy. But the Honduras side is what I'm talking about, and that took basically 4 hours. And the 4 hours was about 2 hours worth of waiting, only about a half hour on the El Salvador side. And then the actual processing of the documents was maybe an hour. We got to the Nicaragua border. We checked out of Honduras, easy peasy, no problem. And then it's a big complex, a lot of trucks. So the first thing you're supposed to do, you're supposed to go past all these trucks driving on the wrong side of the road, because the line of trucks trying to get in and out goes on for miles on both sides. And if you're a tourist, you don't have to wait in that line, but the only way to get by them is to drive on the wrong side of the road, and then as cars that are coming towards you on the other side, you pull over to the wrong side, to the left side of the road, let them go, and then you keep going. So you do that for a couple of miles, and you get to the front, and then you write your name down, you go into the plaza, you do your passport stamps, and just so happened there was a bus there with like 100 Chinese people, tourists. I don't know why they were there. They all showed up, so the guy had to do a bunch of stuff for them. Finally gets to us. The passport part was easy, and then we had to go do our car, and that's where S hit the fan. First thing they asked for, if you guys don't know, in Nicaragua, if you have a drone, they are anti-drone. Drones are not allowed. Nicaragua, the government is basically an authoritarian dictatorship, so they do not like people having the ability to document things that they're not supposed to see. So they don't even like cameras necessarily. So you're only allowed to have like one camera per person basically. So I shipped the drone from Guatemala knowing that was the case. Except when I shipped the drone, I just took the drone out, took the batteries out, because you're not supposed to ship lithium batteries in packages. So I took the batteries out, I took the controller out, because the controller has lithium battery in it too. So I just shipped the drone itself. And the problem that I ran into is the guy at DHL, when he wrote up the receipt, he didn't write what was actually inside. He chose some random drop-down value that said like jewelry or metal parts or something that didn't say drone. So the guy looked at it and was like, well, this doesn't say drone. We can't accept it. He's like, do you have the batteries? So yeah, I have the batteries in the controller because I can't ship it. You want to be honest, because they can do a thorough search of your car, and if they find it, that's problems. So there's a lot of back and forth. We met these two guys from BC. They're both from Colombia, but they've been living in BC most of their lives, and now they spend a lot of time in Costa Rica, and they're driving down. We just happened to see them at the Honduras border, saw them again at the El Salvador border, so they helped us with a little bit of communication between the customs agent, because as we're getting better at Spanish, I don't know if we'll ever get really good at like official business Spanish, right? Because our Spanish is going to be like casual use. So he helped us. He said, hey, the drone, there's no drone here. The guy wrote the wrong thing. There's nothing. What can you do? You're not going to find a drone here. What can you do? And ultimately, after hours and hours of figuring things out back and forth, they decided they're just going to confiscate my batteries and my controller, which is a bummer because that's about $350 worth of gear. And after all of this, going through all of this, in the meantime, dealing with a bunch of different people, the customs people, the people from the national police who's stationed there with x-ray machines that's x-raying everybody, and then writing a bunch of paperwork, going to the back room, doing more paperwork. And these paperwork people also, they're not the most motivated at getting their work done quickly. There's a lot of doing a little bit, going chatting with a friend, and coming back, walking around, doing a little bit more, going chatting with a friend. And meanwhile, we're just sitting there waiting. So we got there about 2:00. And when we finally got all the paperwork done, back in the car, ready to go, it was 8. So 4 hours at the Honduras border, 6 hours at the Nicaragua border, entering Nicaragua in the dark, and having to find some lady on the side of the road who's selling insurance, because you need to buy third-party liability insurance. And by sheer luck, we see this lady eating something in front of this street food restaurant. So we ask her, do you know where the insurance agent is? She's like, I'm the insurance agent. I mean, there was no indication at all that she was the insurance person, but luckily we found her, because they don't sell insurance at the customs immigration plaza, and they don't tell you that you need insurance. So once you get into Nicaragua, people have talked about getting pulled over or getting stopped at the checkpoints and police asking for insurance, and if you don't, it's a stiff fine. I don't know how they calculate the fine. Could be a bribe, could be an actual fine, who knows. But we knew about this, so we actually got insurance, $12 for 30 days. That's our harrowing day, leaving El Salvador finally and doing 2 border crossings. I think that's our only double border crossing day since we came back from Europe. We've done multiple border crossings a bunch of times in Europe because it's easy. There's no border checks, and even when there are, being European citizens, it's easy. But yeah, Central America is a whole different ball game. It was not fun, but we're glad we got it done. Now we're at Cerro Negro, Central America's newest volcano. It's about 2,000 feet in elevation here compared to the town of León down there, which is at 500 feet. And because the way the mountain is formed, there's kind of a nice breeze that comes through here, so it's about 10 to 15 degrees cooler here. So, it should be nice. And the other thing is, we've been traveling through some serious heat. Even though it's the middle of December, the heat does not relent here at about 13 degrees north in latitude. We are, in fact, further north here than the northernmost tip of mainland South America. So we're pretty far south. And we've been camping at basically truck stops in Central America, in El Salvador the night before, last night, at a truck stop just 4 miles in to the border. They're just glorified dirt lots with really makeshift showers and bathrooms. Sketch, super sketch. But does the trick. No electricity though, and we've been running the fan a lot. We've got even another fan that we run, but to run it we have to run the inverter. So running 2 fans, 2 big fans, the ceiling fan, the fantastic fan from Dometic that's built into the van, a standalone oscillating fan that we bought from Mexico, and then our 4 little small USB fans. So running all 6 of these fans along with the fridge in hot weather, having to run a lot more than normal, really has been taking a toll on our battery. So we're waking up to, battery about 150 amp hours strong each day, and it's tough to charge it up. Not a lot of skies, a lot of clouds, so not always fully charging. If you know about solar panels, they are very inefficient when they get really hot. So in this weather, the most I'm getting is about 260 watts, which is a little less than 70 watts per panel, 65 to 70 watts per panel when it's so hot like this. That's their max output. So hopefully, we'll get to a place that's cool enough where we don't have to run the fan. And this is on top of running Starlink, right? Forget about it. Our battery capacity really needs to maybe double at some point to really be able to take all of this consumption. Starlink, charging phones, charging devices, running fans, running the fridge, and all the other small stuff. Lights, water pump, everything else. I'm happy we're here though. Look at that beautiful thing. We'll be in Nicaragua for probably 3 or 4 more days, and then we'll make our way into Costa Rica. And Costa Rica is where we're gonna stay for a while. Finally, we'll slow down again and probably stay for a good 2-3 months when we get there. And then make our way into Panama sometime early spring. I hope. That's the plan.
He got cut in half.
Then Ava destroyed him with his toes.
Did it look like Abe Lincoln?
No, it's not
a top
Abe
hat
Lincoln.
and a face.
He doesn't have a top hat.
It's like a tall hat. He's a top hat-ish hat. Are you trying to make this like
Top
a TV
hat,
show?
top hat. Top hat tattoo.
Monster, you're weakening the stick.
In the superstore.
Water? It's water.
Oh, what's his
Put
name?
the picture on my face.
Okay, that guy.
Yeah. Marcus.
The guy who shoves his poop through the drain of his shower.
They don't need
Huh? Doesn't everybody do that?
Sure. So you don't poop in the shower every morning and stamp it down the drain with your feet.
Oh my God.
Oh, okay, whatever. Screw you, snowflakes.
We found a nice campground near Lake Nicaragua and spent the next few days getting our documents ready to make the final border crossing. Nicaragua is a beautiful country, but it is unfortunate that the people are living under such a suppressive regime. The recent history of the country is full of turmoil, including plenty of meddling by foreign entities, including the United States government. All that has resulted in the current rule under an authoritarian dictatorship. It is a place full of potential. As a matter of fact, people commonly think of Costa Rica as the most biodiverse country in Central America. It is actually Nicaragua who holds that crown. With more landmass, longer coastlines, volcanoes, and Central America's biggest freshwater lake, it has so much potential for it to be as prosperous as its neighbors to the south. But it is going to take more than demonstrations and reform for democracy to take place and to make a turn for the better. It won't be that straightforward to exit Nicaragua, as their process to leave is almost as difficult as it is to enter, but we're ready. In the next episode, we'll cross into Costa Rica and hopefully slow our pace way down to enjoy the sights and sounds of what's left of Central America before planning our path across the Darien Gap into South America.